The number one mistake that new presenters make is to try and mimic and copy someone else's style, mannerisms entirely. Hi, my name is Darren Tay, and in this particular video, I'm going to share with you why it's important to develop your own style of speaking and to discover your own voice instead of just purely mimicking someone else. You see, when it comes to our learning journey as a public speaker, it really boils down to understanding what that learning curve is like first. So the learning curve of a public speaker, as we acquire more and more skills and get more and more competent, typically it follows through with this particular progression. Starts first where we are trying to take a look at multiple references. We're trying to see what are the good habits that great speakers exhibit. What are some of the great techniques that some of these great speakers utilize in their presentations. Now, at that particular phase of learning, it's perfectly fine to have many of these successful case studies and examples and role models as examples in which we can see, we can internalize, and then we can say, okay, that's how I can apply it in my presentation. So even if there's a slightly higher level of, for lack of a better term, mimicking, yes, that is fine. But even then, as public speaking trainers, when we train our students and our adult learners, we share with them, it is not so much of copying their style per se, but rather looking out for the specific techniques, which I mean by what are the ways the individual use to craft a captivating introduction. Is it the use of quotations? Would it be the use of a story? What goes into that story? Would it be the use of, say, an audience survey or a use of rhetorical question? These are what we mean by techniques that we look at, say, some successful speakers use. We then compare it across several other successful speakers. We're not trying to necessarily say, okay, I'm going to try and copy the exact tone of voice. I'm going to try to copy that particular person's accent. So no, that's not what we are gunning for, even at the beginner's level. Then slowly, as we progress and get more and more competent in trying out some of these textbook techniques, we'll then go on to the intermediate stage. Now, the intermediate stage is usually exploratory, where we start to explore whether or not that particular technique suits me for this particular setting, in a business setting, for example. For this setting, in the interpersonal communication setting. For example, this, when I am putting on a hat as a trainer, because when you're an intermediate speaker, you're more likely to juggle and wear multiple hats. You could be a master of ceremony already, you could be a trainer already. Then when you go to the advanced stage, this is the part where you research. This is the part where you break down, say, some of the tried and tested techniques already into its constituent elements. For example, people say, oh, you should use a story, and typically you use characters, conflict solver, resolution. Then what you do at the advanced stage is you break it down. This particular speaker would develop the characters by talking about emotions first. Hey, emotions-wise, this speaker made use of emotive words. Can I take out emotive words? Can I add in, say, the use of metaphors? Can I take out metaphors and add in the use of similes? So these are what advanced speakers will do already. They break down some of the tried and tested techniques and they try and synthesize by using different of these elements and come up with their own technique, come up with their own, perhaps, framework, come up with their own scaffold. Regardless of where you are, beginner, intermediate, or at the advanced level, what is important to note is that you would want to not copy and mimic someone's style, someone's accent, someone's choice of words. If you really want to copy or mimic at the beginner stage, sure, it's probably copying and mimicking to some level and extent the techniques when it comes to speech writing, speech crafting, what goes into the captivating intro, what goes into the body. Maybe it's the PEL approach, maybe it's the Krupak approach. Whatever approach that is, it's more technique based. Now, what we don't advise our speakers, beginner, intermediate, or advanced, to mimic and copy is to copy someone's style. For example, oh, this particular speaker, when he or she speaks, will always put the left hand in the pocket and then would always hold up this particular finger to emphasize points. You don't have to do that to emphasize. There are many different ways to emphasize. For example, you could emphasize through your voice by placing more force. Susan, I love your pink dress. You could emphasize with your voice. You could emphasize using your body. Susan, I love your pink dress. Emphasize love by using this. It need not necessarily be this. You could emphasize by way of stage positioning, taking a step forward. Susan, I love your pink dress, moving the entire body, taking a step forward. So these are things that we look out for, that what you feel comfortable with. That is something that we should look out for. So the number one mistake that new presenters make is that in order for me to be a great presenter, I must copy everything down to the accent, down to the stylistics, down to the use of the gesture for that particular person. It need not be, especially not so for the style and for the accent and perhaps even the voice. more so of look at the techniques, look at the strategy. So even when you copy smart as well.